Have you ever had the feeling that someone was watching you? That strange sensation in the back of your mind, the subtle details that don't quite add up. What if one day you came face to face with the person following you, only to realize it was you? Now, let's begin. I always had the feeling that someone was watching me. At first, I dismissed it as paranoia, a trick of the mind. But then, things started happening. Small things, barely noticeable at first. My phone would vibrate in my pocket, but when I checked, there were no notifications. My apartment door was unlocked when I got home, even though I always double-checked. I saw a shadow in my peripheral vision more times than I could count. Every time I turned my head, there was nothing there. It wasn't random. It was targeted. I was being followed. One night, I was walking home from work. The streets were mostly empty, just the occasional passing car, flickering streetlights, and the hum of distant traffic. That's when I saw him. A man standing beneath a street lamp just outside my apartment building. Not moving, just waiting. Something about him froze me in place. The way he stood. The way his hands rested in his pockets, casual but deliberate. The way the light caught his face, revealing just enough for me to see that he looked exactly like me. Older, but me. My mind rejected it at first. Maybe I was tired. Maybe it was just someone who looked similar. But then he smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Like he was expecting me to recognize him. Like he had been waiting for this moment. I took a step back, and he mirrored me. Exactly. My heart started pounding. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I was inside my apartment, the door locked behind me. I stood there, breathing hard, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. Then my phone vibrated. I grabbed it, hands shaking. A text message. Unknown number. You shouldn't have run. Ice crawled down my spine. Another vibration. A voicemail. I hesitated, then pressed play. At first, just static. Then, a voice. My voice. If you want to live, meet me at the old train station. Midnight. The message ended. I stared at the screen, cold fear tightening around my chest. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. But deep down, I already knew. It was. And if I didn't go, I had the feeling that I wouldn't live long enough to understand why. The train station was abandoned, the kind of place people forgot about. Rusted tracks, broken windows, graffiti-covered walls. It was cold, the kind of cold that settled in your bones. And I wasn't alone. He was there, waiting. The man who looked like me. He stood beneath a flickering overhead light, hands in his pockets, calm. Like this was just another day for him. For me, my hands were shaking. My heart was hammering against my ribs. You came, he said. His voice. My voice. A little deeper. A little more tired. I swallowed hard. Who are you? The man smiled. I think you already know. I clenched my jaw. No, this wasn't happening. This was impossible. You're lying, I said. This is some kind of trick. His smile didn't change. A trick? He repeated. Is that what you tell yourself? I took a step back. No, this isn't real. You aren't real. He sighed, like he had heard this before. Look, he said, taking a slow step forward. I don't have time to convince you, but you need to listen to me. Why? Because if you don't, we both die. Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. What do you mean? I asked. The man ran a hand through his hair. In exactly 3 days, he said, someone is going to kill you. My mouth went dry. Who? His jaw tightened. Me. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. You're lying, I whispered. I wish I was, he said. But this has already happened before. It's a loop, and every time, I fail to stop it. I felt sick. What are you talking about? I demanded. I don't know who started it, he said. But every version of us goes through this. I come back. I try to warn you. But no matter what I do, you always end up dead. I shook my head. That doesn't make sense, he laughed. But there was no humor in it. I know, he said. That's what I said too. The first time. You have 2 options, he continued. 1, You ignore this. Pretend it never happened. In 3 days, you die. I swallowed. And the second? His face darkened. You kill me first. My stomach turned. That's not an option. He held my gaze. It's the only option. Silence. The overhead light flickered. A train rumbled somewhere in the distance. I don't believe you, I whispered. You will, he said. Sooner or later, you will. I took a step back. He didn't follow. 3 days, he said again. That's all you have. Then he turned and walked into the darkness, leaving me alone, with a choice I didn't know how to make. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying the conversation, his words, his warning. Every time, you end up dead. What did he mean? Was he really me? Or something else? Was this some kind of sick test? Or was I really trapped in something bigger than I could understand? I checked the clock. 72 hours left. I spent the first day pretending it never happened. I went to work, had the same conversations, ate the same lunch, told myself it was all just a delusion, a dream. But the second day, I started seeing him again, watching from a distance, a reflection in a store window, a shadow in my apartment, a phone call where no one spoke. The third day, I woke up to a text message. You wasted your time. He's coming. I didn't know who sent it. I didn't need to. I already knew. I grabbed my coat and ran. I didn't know where. I just ran. The city felt different. Empty. Like the world had been waiting for this moment. I turned a corner and there he was, standing in the middle of the street, blocking my path. The way he looked at me, it wasn't anger. It wasn't hate. It was disappointment. You really thought ignoring it would change things? He asked. My heart pounded. This isn't real, I whispered. None of this is real. Then why are you afraid? He took a step forward. My body screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. You could have stopped this, he said. But you didn't. Now I have to. He reached into his jacket. I saw the glint of metal. A gun. I moved before I could think. Lunged at him. We hit the ground hard. The gun skidded across the pavement. I scrambled for it. He was faster. He pinned me down, hand around my throat. This is how it always ends, he said. I never wanted it to. But you leave me no choice. The world blurred. My lungs burned. I reached for something, anything. My fingers wrapped around cold steel. I squeezed the trigger. A gunshot echoed through the empty street. His grip loosened. His body slumped. I gasped for air, shoving him off me. My vision cleared. I was staring at myself, blood pooling beneath me, my own face staring back, lifeless. I dropped the gun. My breath came in ragged gasps. My hands were shaking. I had done it. I had broken the cycle. And then my phone vibrated. A new message. Unknown number. See you in 3 days. My stomach dropped. I looked down at the body again, and for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't before. The scar on his temple, the one I got when I was 16. But I didn't have that scar. Not yet. My hands started shaking again. Because I hadn't broken the cycle, I had just taken my place in it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more mind-bending sci-fi horror stories. What do you think really happened? Was the loop inevitable, or was there a way to escape? Share your thoughts in the comments. Would you face your future self or run? Let me know what kind of stories you'd like to hear next. Thanks for watching. Until next time.